Welcome, everyone. Good evening to our alumni and friends in our Midwest and East Coast communities, and good afternoon to our West Coast attendees. I'm Kelly Page, class of 1987, and the Associate Vice President for Alumni Relations. I want to welcome you to the second of several conversations with President Callahan, hosted by members of the University Board of Regents. Today, we welcome Regent Rick Fleming, class of 1969. Rick Fleming was elected to the university's Board of Regents in April of 2012, and he is chair of the investment committee. He was the chief financial officer of USG Corporation for approximately 18 years and was its executive vice president and CFO from 1999 until his retirement in 2012. He is currently the chair of the board of directors of Columbus McKinnon Corporation and served as the company's interim CEO during the first half of last year. He is also a member of the board of directors of Boise Cascade Company and Optum Energy LLC. He is a past chair and current board member of UCAN, an Illinois Youth Services Agency, and a past board member of the Child Welfare League of America, Family Care Services of Chicago, and the Metropolitan Club of Chicago. He served on the Eberhart School of Business Campaign Committee from 2003 to 2006 and was a member of the Business Schools Advisory Board in 2005. Regent Fleming is married to alumna Diana Lone Fleming, class of 1971. They met on the Stockton campus and were married in Morris Chapel 51 years ago. They live in Chicago, Illinois. And please welcome President Chris Callahan, who joined us this past July as the 26th president of the University of the Pacific. Prior to that, he served as the founding dean of the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University, and as the vice provost of the ASU Downtown Phoenix campus and chief executive officer of Arizona PBS. President Callahan holds a master's degree in public administration from Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government and a bachelor's degree in journalism from Boston University's College of Communication. Prior to ASU, he was at University of Maryland, where he served as associate dean of the Philip Merrill College of Journalism and senior editor of the American Journalism Review. President Callahan lives on the Stockton campus with his wife of 34 years, Jean Callahan. They have two grown sons, Cody and Casey, and the newest addition to the Callahan family is Callie, an 11-week-old golden retriever. Please join me in welcoming President Chris Callahan and our host for today's conversation, Regent Rick Fleming.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's great to be here today. And I also want to thank you for organizing this event. This is a terrific turnout of alumni and friends. And I want to extend a big welcome to everyone on this call. Of course, it'd be wonderful if we could get together with an in-person meeting, but one big advantage of Zoom is that we can call in from many different states and cities, including Chicago, where I am right now with Diana. Also, I'd like to share a big thank you to President Callahan for joining us today to share his vision for UOP and update us on the state of the university. Now, before we hear from Chris, I want to tell you why UOP is so important to me. And the reason is sitting right next to me. This is my beautiful wife, Diana. And 51 years ago, as Kelly mentioned, on March 21st, we were married in Morris Chapel. And the second reason that UOP is so important to both of us is that it has shaped our lives. For Diana, Pacific was a place that encouraged her to express her opinions and find her voice. And that gave her the confidence that led to a lifetime of activism and leadership. And after 51 years of marriage, believe me, I know something about her ability to express her opinions. For me, UOP was where I discovered how to combine my left brain and right brain interests, and this has led to a fruitful business career. Now, before I ask Chris a few questions, Kelly requested that I briefly explain what the heck a regent does and why I became one. So let me give you a very quick tour of that. The Board of Regents is the governing board of the university. Our job is to help the university execute its mission and vision and live by its values. The mission of UOP, which is proudly stated on our website, is to provide a superior student-centered learning experience integrating liberal arts and professional education and preparing individuals for lasting achievement and responsible leadership in their careers and communities. So the Regents work with the President and the administration to achieve this mission. And we do this by providing oversight in a number of critical areas, including tone at the top, strategic planning, resource allocation, finances and compliance, succession planning and talent management, developing a compensation philosophy, academics, enrollment, retention, and the student experience, and board development. And we're also responsible for measuring the CEO's performance and determining the pay. We have 9-year terms, and my 9 years are actually up this year. This time has gone by in a flash because being a regent has been one of the greatest experiences of my life. And here's why. I've been able to give back my time and talent to the university, along with some financial support. I've been able to work on meaningful and impactful issues such as endowment, investment, and management, reimagining the George strategic plan, and most importantly, the presidential search that led to our successful recruitment of Chris. And lastly, I've worked with an extraordinarily talented board and made lifelong friends. But that's enough about me. It's now time to ask Chris why he chose UOP. So Chris, what drew you to the University of the Pacific, and what have been your biggest surprises, both positive and negative, since joining us?
Well, first of all, thank you, Rick, for doing this. Diane, it's always wonderful to see you. I will just add to Rick's description of the Regents. You have no idea how much time and effort goes into this. It really is extraordinary, and every one of our Regents puts in that sort of an effort. Rick has the misfortune of having such a knowledge base that, in addition to all of the meetings and all the preparation that he has to do, he has to put up with me making regular phone calls to him so I can get his sage advice and counsel. And I can tell you that is invaluable. So Rick, thank you for all that you do for our university. So why Pacific? It starts off with, I think, the same reason why our students and why our alumni chose Pacific. And that is, it is the most overused phrase in higher education, student-centric, right? And every university claims to be student-centric, all about the student. At Pacific, we really are. This group knows that better than any. I see that on display every day with our students and our alumni. So we had an event just yesterday for Professor Gene Pearson of our geology department. I'm looking at the screen now. I almost guarantee that that Professor Pearson was here on campus when you were here. We are celebrating Gene's 50th year, 50th year as a professor at Pacific. We had all sorts of folks, including alum. I'll pick on Eve Zimmerman, a colleague of Rick's on our board of regents. Eve was a great tennis player, geology major here, and she came on and talked about how Professor Pearson changed her life. And I hear that story when I talk to alums. I hear that over and over again. We were talking to Pete Carroll not long ago, and Pete just talks in unbelievable detail about the influence that Professor Larry Gilbert had on him. I was talking to Scott Boras, the great baseball agent, last week, and Scott told me this wonderful story about how a particular biology professor completely changed the trajectory of his education and his life. So first and foremost, it is that, and I've been in higher education for more than 30 years. I've never seen this sort of passion by faculty for their students. It really is special. But also we have this, and again, why I'm so excited to be here, why Gene and I were so excited to come out, was you have that setting within a major university. Right? And what I just described, you would typically see much, much smaller university. University of the Pacific is a major comprehensive university, 10 schools and colleges, and 100 different majors, more than 150 student groups and activities. So just an unbelievable and somewhat unique mix that really makes this place so special. The fact that it's in beautiful Northern California doesn't hurt, and the fact that it is on, for my money, simply the prettiest campus in American higher education. I mean, this is, it's just so, I just feel so fortunate to be able to work and live here on the Stockton campus. So I think, Rick, for all of those reasons, Gene and I were just really drawn to Pacific, and we're really honored to be here.
Chris, you were appointed as our president before COVID, So what have been the biggest changes that you had to implement in your first year plan due to the pandemic? Also, how has COVID affected UOP in key areas like enrollment, tuition, and student retention?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Rick. So yeah, it changed our plans a little bit going in, and I say that jokingly. Of course, it changed everything fairly dramatically. But I will tell you, the team here absolutely rose to the occasion. Where everybody worked very hard. As you know, enrollment is critical to our success going forward. There were schools around the country that were suffering 10, 15%, 20, 25% enrollment declines. Our enrollment stayed steady. Again, because of the great effort that our faculty and staff put in. We've been remote. We've been remote now for more than a year. And I can tell you, when I talk to students, they tell me the same thing. They absolutely hate it. They are completely sick of it, but they continue to learn, and they continue to learn at a Pacific level. And again, that's just a great testament to our team here, our faculty, and our staff. We have been, again, sort of very, very cautious. And I'll just use, and Rick has heard me talk about this before, I'll juxtapose this with my previous institution, which I loved, Arizona State, a much larger institution. They took a very different path, and the COVID results are noticeable. So I just checked before this meeting, and since the beginning of COVID, we've had 69 confirmed cases of COVID. Thankfully, none serious, 69. My previous university had 100 times that number. 100 times that number. They're at almost 7,000. So very, very different approach with very different results. So that's taken a fair amount of my time, as well as the region's time well spent, I think. But we also continue, Rick, as you know, to continue to mark a path forward in terms of our future strategies and what we need to do to be the best of our kind of university in the entire country in over the next decade.
So Chris, we've heard that we're returning to in-person classes late this summer. Tell us about that plan.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. We're obviously really excited about it. We want to bring back students a little early. So we have 3 summer sessions, 5 weeks each. The third summer session, we're almost thinking about as a pre-fall session. For students who want to get a little head start, they can come back. We will assign them their housing where they would be living ordinarily, and they just start 5 weeks early. We're going to have a lot of classes available to them, a lot of extracurricular activities. And Rick, we think this is really important. I will tell you, listen, the pandemic has affected all of you and your loved ones dramatically. It's really affected our students. And to be that age, when you are in normal times surrounded by dozens and hundreds of your friends and classmates and teammates all the time, and then to go from that to complete isolation now for 14 months, by the time we get back, it will be the better part of a year and a half. That's going to be a transition back. So we want to make sure that students have that ability to sort of ease back in, and particularly the rising sophomores. And I will tell you, Rick, that is the class I am most concerned about, because they have, if you think about what they've experienced, right? They lost the end of their high school senior year. They lost their high school prom and graduation and that summer, and they lost all of freshman year of college. Wow. Think about how important those markers are in our lives, and they didn't have any of that. So our hope is a lot of them will come back 5 weeks early. We will do, and they're academic sophomores, but in fact, they are college freshmen. So we're going to do a lot of those sort of activities to get them acclimated to college life.
Yeah, it's great, Chris, that you and the team are really thinking about the student experience as you bring them back. And you're right, there's been a lot of stress on the student body because of COVID. Well, now it's time for a question that I know is on everyone's mind. Higher education is facing many challenges, including student access due to high tuition, competition from online learning, financial disruption due to COVID, and negative demographics. So like, what else could go wrong, right? How are we positioned versus these challenges?
Yeah, well, Rick, first of all, you're absolutely right. Many of those were pre-COVID challenges. And then you layer on top of that COVID, and boy, that is an unpleasant mix for the future. Having said that, Pacific is situated infinitely better than most other universities in the country. And that is for a couple of reasons. One, we have a fantastic history, right? This is a great place. It's been a great place for a long time. Number two, location. I mean, Northern California, where the rest of the country is going to see declines over the next 20 years in college age populations, the one place where it's actually steady and will be going up a little bit is Northern California. So geographically, we're in a good place. And because of the kinds of people we have here, I think there's always going to be a desire for students like our alums to be in a place where they do have a lot of choices, where they have a lot of flexibility in terms of majors, but they have a much more personalized, individualized educational experience. And at the end of the day, that is not replicable. You cannot do that on scale, online, and remotely. And that, I think, is the special sauce, if you will, of Pacific. And you add all those things together, I actually am very bullish on our future.
Terrific. So Chris, we've heard that we recently hired our first vice president for diversity and inclusion. Please tell us about her and the importance of this move.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. So Mary Wardell is going to be joining us July 1st as our inaugural vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's going to be a member of the cabinet and a direct report to me. A little bit about Mary. She is the best of the best. And some of you, Marche, and I know others know Mary very well. She is a national thought leader on diversity in higher education. If you were, and I will tell you, she was in great demand. We were able to recruit her away from University of San Francisco, one of our WCC competitors and a wonderful school. Could not be more excited to have Mary joining the team. But it's important to know that Mary is going to be our orchestra leader for diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And that's exactly what it is. It really, her main job is getting everybody else excited and understanding the importance of these issues and helping to lead initiatives where I think, Rick, these chief diversity officers, when they don't work well, is when everybody sits back and says, oh, great, now we have a diversity officer. I don't need to worry about that.
Yep.
In my mind, the chief diversity officer is still the president of the university. But now we have a tremendous thought leader who can devote 100% of her time and her energy on these unbelievably important issues. And I would argue issues that are growing in importance as we move on. Rick, as you know, we have a wonderfully diverse student body on some dimensions, but we still have a lot of growth to do. Our faculty and staff, I mean, we're pretty good on diversity, but pretty good is not going to do it. We want to be really a model for DEI across the country, and with Mary as a partner, I am absolutely convinced that we're going to do that. I will tell you also, in addition to all of her other amazing credentials, maybe the most important one is she's a 1989 graduate of the University of the Pacific,
Yeah.
a Stockton native, and somebody who came through our CIP program. She's one of us. She completely gets it, and she is going to add richly to our university.
Sounds terrific. I can't wait to meet her. And you're right, that the end game is really DEI is just part of what we do every day and who we are.
Exactly.
And so that's where we'll be striving to get. Well, Chris, I could ask you a lot of questions, but now's the time to let you interact with our alumni audience. So I'm going to pass this call to Chris Ortega, who will facilitate the next part of our event. Chris.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now it's time for alumni questions for the president. If you use the raise hand featured, you can find that underneath the participants tab. As it comes up, we will be able to call on you, ask you to unmute yourself, and you'll be able to ask your question. While you all are finding that on Zoom, we do have a couple questions that were asked during the registration process. So I'll go ahead and ask one of those. And President Callahan, how can alumni help support Pacific this next upcoming school year?
Well, thanks so much. Whoever asked that, thanks so much for asking. Really, we can use your help in a couple of different dimensions, and I would say three main ones. Number one, just wave the flag. We want to project University of the Pacific everywhere. So simple things like posting about Pacific on your social media channels, having a Pacific license plate, wearing your Pacific t-shirts. Those things might seem like little things, but vitally important to us. Number two, we have a new program, or an expanded program, I should say, that Kelly Page runs with Chris Ferguson, who is our new vice president for enrollment, where alumni are calling admitted Pacific students to get them excited about coming, right? In the admissions process, admitting them, having them apply and admitting them is only, part of it. The most important part is now getting them to come once they're admitted. And we have alumni who are working on that. So any of you can sign up for that. And boy, it makes an awful big difference. They can hear from me, but hearing from you as an alum is quite frankly a more powerful experience for them. So that is the second thing. And third, obviously, it's giving. You see my subtle background here, but giving is actually important on a couple of different levels. One, and Rick has alluded to this already. College tuition everywhere, Pacific included, is expensive and it's getting more expensive. What we need to do is figure out ways to keep tuition as low as possible for students. And a main way of doing that is through contributions and scholarships. And absolutely vital. And we've done, and many of our alums have been very generous, but we really need to crank that up in order to keep that access to Pacific as robust as possible. And then, and I almost hate to mention this, but unfortunately it's really important, and that is national rankings led by US News and World Report. Now, folks in the Academy will argue all day that it's a terrible methodology. And fine, let's just stipulate to that. But the reality of it is the number one source that parents go to determine the quality of a school. And many of our measures are superb, including our social mobility measures. Across the board, we do very well. The worst area, there's 15 different variables that US News measures. The worst one for us is alumni giving, which we always think is weird, because when we know how passionate our alums are. Quite frankly, I think it's on us. I think we haven't done a good enough job to tell that story. So, and in part, that's what I'm trying to do now, is tell that story. We're 206th in the country among major national universities and alumni giving. We are not the 206th university in the country, and we shouldn't be for anything. So the giving, and you'll know we are doing a giving day next month. It's, of course, we always appreciate large gifts, but it's the act of giving that's most important. It's the act of giving, particularly for our alums, because that tells the story of Pacific and the support for this university, and will have a direct impact. Will have a direct impact on our US News rankings. So to give you a sense, our alumni giving last year was a little below 5%. Our major competitors are 2, 3, and 4 times that percentage. They're basically 10%, 15%, and 20%, depending on which schools you're talking about. And I know that's not because our alums are less passionate. I would argue they're more passionate. I think we probably haven't done a good enough job of telling that story and asking for your help.
Thank you so much. And next up, Frank Young, class of 72. I will go, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. And thank you, President Callahan. I joined you on the last listening tour event you did, and I'm glad you're keeping the pace with these. This is terrific.
Good to see you, Frank.
Your comment about alumni giving and getting our story out, I think, is really, really spot on. And one of the stories that I think needs to get out, and I hope get out accurately, is what is going on at Pacific with respect to the course of study in international education and cross-cultural studies that SIS is known for, and its predecessor school, Callison, and RayCal we're definitely known for. Pacific has half a century of excellence in this area, and it's well known. And a couple of my fellow classmates from Callison are also on this call, so if they're nodding their heads, you'll know who they are. Callison and RayCal have set up a Facebook page where alumni from Callison in particular are posting one-page statements about what the Callison education and the international and cross-cultural studies curriculum meant to them, how it helped them succeed in their lives, how it helped them become, achieve their dreams professionally and personally. I would welcome your taking a look at those to seeing, so you can see what this course of study really meant to us and why we are so interested in seeing it continue. Related to that, you're probably aware in 2019, we, a steering committee of a number of us, undertook to raise $31,000 for a Callison SIS study room in the Holt Memorial Library. We achieved this in less than 4 months with an almost 15% participation rate among 900 alums from Callison and SIS. The participation rate among Callison alums was almost 35%. So you've got a core of loyal alums, but we want to make sure that the course of study that meant so much to us doesn't fall by the wayside because of the difficulties that Pacific might have in marketing and selling this type of education. A lot of us, frankly, are concerned about the downgrading of SIS recently to becoming a department within COP. And our hope is that this isn't the, excuse me being candid, but isn't the stalking horse for its disappearance altogether. So I just wanted to express that concern and ask you if you've had any thoughts or any plans on how to strengthen that and sustain that course of study at Pacific.
Well, first of all, Frank, thanks for joining, and I appreciate that. And I know, and I see Wendy and Randy and others on the line, so I very much appreciate that. Two things on that course of study, both of which are being addressed. Number one is enrollment. So I will tell you, Frank, I meet every day with him, but I think this was a conversation we had maybe last Thursday. And it was just between myself and Chris Ferguson. Chris Ferguson is our new vice president for enrollment, came to us from Occidental College. He was at Drexel before that, a major thinker in enrollment. And he and I, we're going through sort of what enrollment is looking like in the COVID world. And quite frankly, and I'm just going to be very blunt with you, Frank, we're looking at the low-hanging fruit. Like, we're looking at, well, what, I mean, listen, we can grow all of these majors, but which ones seem like oddly low? And the ones we talked about were the majors in the business school in Eberhard, right? So if you look around the country, for business enrollment, business enrollment is up across the board. And at Pacific, it's been a little anemic. So when I talk about low-hanging fruit, that is what we're talking about. The other that Chris pointed out was our international programs. And so Chris, and again, we're both, we're the new guys, right? So we're still trying to figure all this out. So we're looking at this and saying, well, we know that international studies is growing in interest around the country among young people, right? For very simple reasons, right? We live in a truly global economy now. The world is smaller and smaller every day. So the interest level in these sorts of courses or study are up and up. And yet here it's been flat or down. So that's sort of the obvious problem. What do we attribute that to? And again, Frank, I'm just going to be really blunt. We've done a lousy job of marketing this place. And I think maybe it's an accident, but I don't think it's an accident. Why Rick and the other regions asked me to come on board, because I come from a communications background. I tend to look at the world through a communications prism. Quite frankly, probably too much, Frank. But in this case, it's a matter of marketing the place. And hopefully you started to see some changes already in terms of the website, some of our videos, some of our messaging. But we're very quickly trying to change that. And honestly, let's focus on the things that are that are going to have the greatest impact right away. And business and international are very close to the top of that list. So a very long-winded answer to your very simple question. Yes, we want to not just keep it, but grow it. And then we need to focus on more fundraising. And Frank, if you could send me the Facebook page, I'd love to look at that, and I'd love to engage with your group in a significant way, because I think there's on both the enrollment and the fundraising side, there's a lot to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And next up, we will have Josh Foster, class of 08.
Hey, Josh.
Hi, President Callahan. First, I have to say thanks for reminding me to make the calls that I've been assigned for the admissions committee, because I still have a few left to do. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're talking about changing the way the university has been marketing itself. And I've seen, along with the website and some other things, the sudden influx of presence on social media. So I follow your account, very cute puppy, by the way. I follow a number of other accounts as well. And you've been showcasing some of the things that the university has been changing, which I honestly didn't see much of on those social media sites before. One thing, though, that I wanted to ask you specifically was there seems to be an investment in solar panels covering one of the parking lots. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe what other similar strategic investments the university might be making like that? I think it's a really cool thing that you're promoting that shows that the university is focused on sustainability.
Well, thanks, Josh. First of all, thanks for noticing. We have been very intentional about the social media, and quite frankly, what I'm trying to do is just sort of model the behavior that I'm hoping others will pick up on. And then we're in the process of doing a national search for a director of social media for the university, because while I'm doing my thing, we're still way behind university-wide on our social channels. And the good news is in social, you can pick that up pretty quickly. But we're about at half the audience of our competitors, which means about a quarter of the audience of where I think we should be. So we'll be able to crank that up much more aggressively. On the solar project, thank you for asking, Josh. And I would love to take all the credit for this. I take none of the credit. This was in the works long before I got here, but it is brilliant. It is brilliant. And just for those of you who don't know about it, I'll give you a quick overview. This is a partnership with Tesla. So Tesla is coming in and building on our 8 main parking lots, these solar structures, which are going up like crazy. I mean, like I would say 2/3 of them are up already. It is going to provide, once we have those in place, which will be the end of this year, it will provide more than 30% of the overall energy needs for the entire Stockton campus. Think about that. Almost a third of our overall energy needs for the Stockton campus. So we're reducing our carbon footprint dramatically. We are, when this is fired up, we will be number 2 in the country of campus generated sustainable energy as a percentage of your needs for that campus. And Josh, as you know, I mean, sustainability is important to the whole world. Students are passionate about it. So we think this is going to be, and in fact, as a parallel path, I'm starting to talk to some professors of like, why don't we have a sustainability degree? We're doing so much in sustainability. We have a sustainability office. We have the Rob Garden, for those of you who've seen that, which is fantastic. We have all of these great initiatives. We're number 2 in the country in use of solar powered vehicles. So it's reducing the carbon footprint. Quite frankly, I think it could be an enrollment draw. My fear was they would look really ugly. Now the good news is, Josh, as everybody knows, most of our parking lots are on the perimeter, right? So they don't get in the way. But those ones right by the quads, by the clock tower, I was like, oh, is that really going to really mess up the views? It does not. So those are up already, and Gene and I walk and Callie walk it, and it really is very unobtrusive. So we're really excited. And I will for Regent Fleming, and Rick and I talk about our finances all the time. In the out years, once this is up and running, and this will be about a dozen years because the savings will be slow over time. But in about 10 or 12 years, this is going to be saving us $1 million a year. That's real money. So you're saving money, you're reducing your carbon footprint, you're attracting students. Well, I'm sorry, Josh. I'm so glad you asked about it. I'm so excited about it. So excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I see a comment in the chat that says the website refresh is amazing, by the way. Congrats. Are there any other changes coming to our website?
Yes, more content, right? So I will tell you, sort of the goal was make it mobile first, right? Because that's where our audience is, right? Our audience lives on these things, right? As you guys know, mobile first, socially friendly, and let's get the darn thing up. One of the things that I sort of saw when I got here is sort of a very methodical approach, and let's get it perfect. Sometimes we don't have time for perfect. Let's get it good and then make it better as we go along, which is exactly what we did for the website. So it needs to be a lot more content. Josh mentioned sustainability. We're just about to put up a splash page on all of our sustainability programs. Rick talked about our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. We have a splash page going up on that. So just a lot more content. And then once we get our social media director really driving social media to the website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Dave Fredrickson.
I don't see Dave. Where's Dave?
Hi. How are you today, Chris?
Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I have to congratulate you because you have remembered one of those old journalistic saws. Babies, dogs, and cheesecake. And Ali has taken over the campus.
Thank you, Dave. And I have to say, I feel a little guilty because it's like, it's just for those of you who don't know, I sort of post semi-regularly a picture of this really cute dog, and in our effort to enroll even more students. But you know what? It works, and she doesn't seem to mind. And Dave, you would be. Well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised when we take our walks now. And of course, there aren't a lot of students on campus, but invariably, any students we pass, it's like Callie, and she runs up to them. And it's wonderful. And I think the higher the voice our students get, the more the dog goes crazy, and it's really adorable. I have to say, it is really cool.
So now along those lines, since my good friend Frank Young decided to engage in a little legislative lobbying there. It seems to me like with your track record in communication, that an area I would like to hope you're going to be looking at is the area I taught in, which is communication. We have had a good, solid program for a long time, and we have a newspaper that goes back to 1908. But currently, we seem to be sort of in a fallow land. We're just not quite focused on where we are. And I'm hoping to hear from you what you might be thinking about in that regard.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Dave. Actually, I've started to have some talks in the community. For those of you who are not in the Stockton area, which is I think most of you on this call, we're in a bit of a news desert here in Stockton. The Record, suffice to say, has seen better days through no fault of theirs, just through the economics of newspapering. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard, and it's really hard to get quality, in-depth local news on a regular basis. So Dave, I'm actually started engaging in conversations with a local philanthropist who might be interested in a startup. And I just read, I thought it was yesterday, about a new nonprofit news organization that folks are talking about bringing online for Stockton. I don't know anything about it. Actually, I was going to ask you about it.
I just saw. I don't know much about it either.
Okay.
Looked interesting.
Yeah, it really did. And suffice to say, Dave and I both lament the fact that we had what I think, and Dave and I have talked about this, what we think is one of the greatest assets a college could have, which is an NPR affiliated radio.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
no longer do. So and that sort of breaks my heart. But I was up there on the old radio station a couple of weeks ago, Dave. You would have got to take it.
it was a great asset.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
So
Dave.
we will
See you.
take one last question from Erin Metler, class of 01.
Hi there. Good to see you both.
Madam
Everybody
President,
else
how are
on the
you?
call. I'm doing well. So I have a tough question for you because, they say the best for last. And that is, you've been here just under a year, certainly have hit the ground running, drinking a bit by the fire hose. Have you taken any time to reflect on your experience? And would you care to share what has surprised you or maybe what has been the most rewarding part of joining our Pacific family?
Well, thanks for asking, Eric. And now I'm told by a reliable source who's been living in my home for the last 34 years that I lack the ability to be introspective. So, but I will try. And I would say the thing that surprised me the most, I already knew. What I didn't understand is the depth of it, Aaron. And that is the passion that people have for our university. I got that sort of intellectually. But until I started engaging with alumni and students and faculty, I did not get the depth of it. I really did, and that has been truly remarkable, and just a wonderful gift, and underscores our decision making to come here. So I guess that's the biggest surprise, even though again, not a surprise, but other than the depth of it. And I'm sorry, Aaron, the other part of your question was.
Perhaps what has been the most rewarding part about joining our family?
Yeah, I think both the most rewarding and the most frustrating, which is living here. The fact that Jean and I had the ability to live on this gorgeous campus was an important factor. Now, of course, we are living on this gorgeous campus, and we're living in the middle of this 175-acre pristine park that we walk around and take advantage of. Except, I guess, when we thought about it, we were engaging with about 4,000 students every day as we were walking around, and now it's pretty darn empty. So it's both it's both heartwarming to be here and makes us anxious for the day when we actually get our students, as well as our faculty and staff, back on campus. So it's a little melancholy, I guess. Now, I suspect there'll be days where I will be yearning for that walk home when on an empty campus, but certainly not now. And that's really, it's wonderful to be here, but it's really hard because of that, Aaron.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm going to take this time to give it back to Regent Fleming to finish up conversations.
Well, thank you, Chris. I've got a few more questions for you, Chris. And the first one is, as we transition out of COVID, what can we look forward to as alumni? Tell us about events like Pacific Fridays, homecoming reunions, particularly as we reopen the campus.
Thank you, Rick. And I'll start off with the Pacific Fridays that Rick is talking about. And this was a tradition when some of you were here, and we're really trying to revive it and supercharge it. And again, it goes back to that flag waving. It seems silly, but wearing orange on Fridays and doing a social media post and telling your classmates to do something on a Friday to celebrate their alma mater is really important. And I think for a university, the first university in California, 170 years old with this unbelievable tradition, that's a tradition I think is really important that we need to bring back. So that's simple. Something to look forward to is Tiger Week in October, and we have, and Kelly Page does such a fantastic job with our homecoming and alumni weekend. This year it's going to be October 8th and October 9th, but we're really expanding it this year to celebrate so many different things, right? We want to celebrate our alumni. We want to celebrate our students and their families. We want to celebrate, quite frankly, the end of COVID, and that we're all back and we're back together. And so we're going to sort of put all of this together into a really, really cool homecoming and family weekend. I think, Kelly, we were meeting on that 2 days ago, yesterday. I get the days confused, but a day or two ago, and we're taking all the great things that Kelly and her team does every year and getting more engagement, getting the athletics folks and the coaches engaged, getting all the deans engaged. So there's going to be even more rich opportunities for our alums to come back and to fully engage. And then we're going to cap it all off on Sunday with graduation ceremonies. Now you say graduation ceremonies in October, that sounds crazy. Well, it is heartbreaking, but our Pacific students, our young alums, the class of 2020 and the class of 2021 will have never had that experience of walking across the stage, getting their diploma, and celebrating their great achievement with their family and friends and loved ones. That breaks my heart. So we're going to take that Sunday of homecoming weekend and have graduation events, the whole bit, caps, gowns, all the pomp and circumstance for those who can come back. We understand a lot won't be able to come back, but for those who can come back, because it is such an important part and it's such a wonderful memory for folks. And we're doing this year, we're doing a remote graduations like we do remote everything else. And Kelly and Steve White and others have come up with great ideas. Kathy Wooten, great ideas on how we can engage our class of 2021. No matter how good it is, it's just not the same as being there. It's just not the same. So we're going to do both for our students. And so, Rick, that is going to be sort of all things Tiger Week.
It sounds really super. And I think in the chat right now, we put up the save the date, actually, so everybody can check the date. So Chris, I got a question that inquiring minds want to know. What is the coolest thing about being the president of UOP?
Well, it hasn't happened yet, Rick, and I've only had little snippets of it, but it's the ability to interact with these unbelievably smart, interesting, engaged students. I mean, that's why, I'm not a traditional academic. I wasn't a scholar. I'm here because of the student experience, and Gene and I are doing this, as Rick knows, as a team. That's what we're most excited about. And we've had little tastes of that. We have about 190 students on campus. It's mostly our athletes, international students. And so we've been able to engage with them a little bit. And it's just a taste of what is to come. That's what really gets us excited.
Great. So as everyone knows, our capital campaign is called Leading with Purpose. And one of the things that I know you like to do, Chris, is challenge all of us to ask or think about what is our purpose. So I'm going to turn the tables and ask you, what is your purpose?
Well, thanks, Rick. I think now, certainly, my purpose is to help students achieve their dreams. I mean, that sounds very simple. It might even sound a little corny, but that is my reason for being. It is to help these students. They already know what their dreams are. They know what they want to do. I want to be able to help that in some small way.
Great. And how does that relate to your vision for UOP?
Well, this is, my vision for our great university is in 10 years for this to be the best institution of its kind in the country. What do I mean by best? The best small, student-centric, comprehensive university. So universities that are 10,000, fewer than 10,000 students, but are completely focused on students, but are real universities with all of the choices that come with it. So when you think about, when I think about, who are we going after? It's simple. It's a fairly short list. It's Santa Clara, Loyola Marymount, Elon, Creighton, University of San Diego, University of San Francisco, a few others. Those are, I think, and I think this is very achievable. I think we can be not as good, but I think we can be better, measurably better than all those institutions by the end of the decade. And that's what I am focused on.
Yeah. So it's all about the student experience, and if we can basically take that and add a comprehensive university set of choices in a small college setting, we will be a winner.
Exactly.
Well, that's terrific. Now, one of the rules that I know that you follow, and I was taught when I was taking my speech classes at UOP, is tell them once, tell them twice, tell them 3 times. So let's go back to how can the alumni help us attain that vision for UOP?
Thank you, Rick. Wave the flag in any and all ways. And I see Gil and some others on the call that do that fantastically, Aaron and others, Dave Frederickson. Wave the flag, number 1. Number 2, if you have the time, please reach out to us. Like Josh, we will give you a list of folks to call. It won't be as long as the list that I have, I will tell you, but we'll give you a list of folks to call, admitted students. And then Pacific Gives, April 27th, 28th, noon to noon, a 24-hour period. We'd love you to be a Pacific Gives ambassador, which is pretty straightforward. If you go to pacific.edu/Pacific Gives, you can download one of these very cool Zoom backgrounds, as I have. There's a lot of graphics that you can post on social media. And then, of course, make a gift during that 24-hour period. Those are really the 3 things that I think can be most impactful for us that alumni can do right away. And then I guess finally, boy, I'd love to see as many of you as possible on October 8th and 9th for our what I'm informally calling Pacific Palooza. All things Pacific.
We're looking forward to it. Diane and I actually live across from Lollapalooza, so I think Pacific Palooza would be a nice break for us. Well, thank you, Chris. I know that I'm speaking on behalf of everyone that we really appreciate hearing about the state of the university and your plan for UOP to not only survive, but also thrive during these challenging times. And thank you for your leadership and all that you do. And finally, a big thank you to everybody on this call. UOP is special because of you. And it's been my honor and pleasure to be with you today to host this event. So I think we've got some closing videos to look at, maybe a little bit of music, but let me just say as we transition to that, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Tigers, and we'll see you on Pacific Gives Day.